Welcome to Creating 3D Stuff. Um, if you have any questions, you can ask me questions anytime while I'm working, and we'll answer them best I can. And um, questions about anything is fine, and I'll respond. And if you have any suggestions about what to make next, our next project, go to the Patreon page to do that. There's a link in the channel. Okay, so for today, we're going to make this stopwatch, or pocket watch, whatever you want to call it. I thought that'd be an interesting project to make. So there's a couple things we should do in Photoshop first, the texture. So we'll open up Photoshop. And pull in this image. First thing we always do is crop it so that we just have what we need here. Okay, so what we need to do is separate out the hands of the watch because those will be separate objects. So we don't want them to be embedded into this texture. So let's pull these out onto their own area. Copy paste. I'm just using the polygon selection tool and then the move tool to move it to its own area. So we can model that separately. Just put it right there. Now that I've moved it, I want to use the clone tool and hide the hands that are on this image. So the clone tool and just cover it up. I don't want to clean it up really because there's cracks and smudges and stuff, and I think that adds character. It shows that it's an old watch, that it's been has dents in it. I really like that. I don't want it to look perfect. Okay, I think we hid that, and there's actually a little hand on the seconds right here. So I'm going to copy and paste that and move it over here and do the same thing, hide the original hand in here. Okay, so that looks good. Now, the only other thing that I want to do is when we model this ring here and these rings here for the chain, I want to have a nice continuous texture, so I'm going to copy and paste out a separate one for this and kind of clean up this texture here so the metal doesn't overlap, and so that we can do a model that looks good, and then once we're done drawing the model, we can duplicate it and we can make it overlap in 3D instead of overlapping in 2D. I think that's good enough for now. Okay, let's see how that works out. Also, this is a separate piece, but I might just ignore that because it's just a ring. It's just a little bit smaller, and it has a notch out of it. It is a detail, but I'm gonna ignore that detail for now, purposely, not because I didn't notice it. Also, this texture here, I want to fix these ones too, because this will have to be fixed. And then also this ring here. Put that in its own area. And fix this texture here. Grab a piece of this and copy paste it over here, because I need it to be rotated a little bit to make it work. Then use the eraser tool to kind of erase the parts you don't need. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to flatten all these layers together. So that I can edit it all as one image now. Okay. We should be ready to do the 3D model now. Okay, let's save that as a Photoshop file, and then as a JPEG. With a compression rate of 9. Then we're going to open up a fresh version of SketchUp. We'll drag that texture image into SketchUp from Windows Explorer. Right click, explode. And that turns it into a 3D face with 4 lines around it, and not just an image anymore. So if I go to my materials window, I can click on the default material and apply that to the back, and then turn on X-ray mode. So I've got a nice surface to work with. I'm gonna say that this watch is probably 2 inches tall here, but it's very difficult to model something very small, so I'm going to start with it at 20 inches tall, and then later on I'll scale it down to 2 inches. I'll just scale it at 0.1. Let me go to View, Toolbars, bring back the large tool set, and say Show Screen Tips and Large Icons, so you can see what I'm doing a little better. So to scale this the way I want it to, I'll select the Select tool, all the lines in that one face, right click, say Make Group, double click to go inside the group. With the pencil tool, I'll draw a line from the bottom of the watch up to the top of the watch here. And then use eraser tool, delete that. So if I use my tape measure, I can see right now this is at 10 feet, 1 inch, but I want it to be 20 feet to start off with, or 20 inches. So I'll tape measure tool, click on this side, then click on this side, and type in 20, enter. It says, do you want to resize? Yes. So now, if I draw a line and just measure, it's 1 foot 8 or 20 inches. Right click, explode that again. And now we can start to model. We're going to move this line, make it exactly in the center. That's the only thing is you see it's a little bit off. It's probably rotated a little bit in the photo. As you can see, this diamond shape here, or whatever that image is, and then this is a little bit off. So I can fix that manually in SketchUp here. Let me just save this real quick before I keep going. Let's see. Okay, so the way I fix that is I draw a line on the center that I want it to be. So I can see this straight line is off center. And I'll draw another line and line it up with the center using that little marker. So now I want to select everything except my true center line, which is that one. So I'll hold down, I'll use select tool, drag, select everything, hold down Control Shift, and then deselect the true line. And then right click, make group. Now I go to the rotate tool and I can rotate it from this point to this point and then snap it to the true line. Now it's in 3D, it's lined up perfectly. And let's explode all that. And then we'll just we'll start off by just splitting this whole thing in half. I want to separate out a few of these things on their own, just cut them out with the pencil tool. So that we don't lose them, they don't get deleted. Actually, we have that over there. But I'm going to cut these out separately just to keep the placement. I'll show you what I mean in a minute here. So I need to separate all these objects so I can model them individually. Now I should be able to delete these extra lines. So I'm going to save a copy of everything. Just move, hold down Control, move a copy down just so I have it for reference. And then now that I have that reference saved, I can delete. I'm going to delete everything except this part right here. And this part right here. Use the eraser tool to get rid of that. So I'm going to move this over. Oh, actually, I have this too. So, I'm going to do this a little bit different than I was originally thinking. Let's start off by going to Styles and hiding the model axis. And then let's turn this into a group. Right-click, make group, then double-click, then click View, Component, Edit, Hide Rest of Model. So we can just focus on one object at a time. I'm going to move these lines out of the way. So I want to start by drawing a circle. And by default it has 24 sides. We want a lot more than that, so we'll type in 120, enter. So it'll give us 120 sides to this circle. And we're going to draw a place where we can see it's really defined, that we can do as a starting point. Possibly right there. Let's see here. I think that is a good starting point. Let's delete these extra things and use the offset tool, and we can offset these. Make a few more lines. Now we can see it gets off a little bit, and I'm guessing that's because of the angle of the photo is a little bit off. So it's a little bit lower here. What I want to do instead of moving the lines, I want to move the texture. So, because I want this watch to be circular, even though the angle of the photo was off a little bit. So I'm going to do a little trick for that. Let me save it. So I'm going to copy this face up. And then I'm going to scale it. I'm scaling that texture. Turn off shadows. I also need to scale this line in so I can see where the texture is. Now I'm going to scale that face. So that lines up right, but I want to line up this texture with the underneath line there. So there it is lined up. So in theory, if we move this up, turn off X-ray mode for a second, go to Materials tab, eyedropper this texture down onto here. Our texture should line up with our modeling lines better now. But I don't want to do it to this inner part though, so I'm going to undo a few times. This will be a little bit different. Because of the perspective, it gets a little bit tricky. So I could see this has to be wider here. So I can do that again. Just copy it, make it wider, and then eyedropper it onto that face. Okay. Now I want to move this texture a little bit. Right click on the face, texture, position, and I can slide it around a little bit. Actually, it's not too bad already. I might want to get rid of this line altogether. Yeah, let's do it like that. Okay, so now I'm going to... I need to save these little notches here. Otherwise, how would we get the watch to open up for us so we can see the little photo inside? Needs a latch on it. Erase these extra lines we don't need. I'm gonna move that, move a copy up so I can get rid of this. And then give a default material, use push-pull tool, give it some thickness. And go to the Soften Edges tab, and let's soften these edges up. Reapply the material, and then soften the edges even more and make it a group. So now we need to work on the watch part. So we're gonna use the push-pull tool to pull these up, give it some thickness. And I'm just double clicking it. Once you do one, you can double click it and make it a little bit. Just repeat the last operation. There, that looks pretty good. I want to make this edge a little rounded. So what we can do to make it rounded is delete that face. Well, I don't want to get rid of the texture. Let's save the texture. Delete that face, move this face down. Then select that face and control select that, or those two lines. Go to the sandbox tab and say create terrain from set of edges. So it's going to automatically generate a surface between any edges that I select. And it's really good for landscaping, but you can use it for any kind of operation, making any kind of surface. And it works really good when you select two different lines, but you can select more than two lines. You can select as many as you want. Hopefully it doesn't crash. Not sure why it's taking so long. I think I might have crashed it. Oops. Should have saved it before I did that operation. Yeah, it looks like it's crashed. Ooh. Goodness. Okay. That's not good. I guess I'll just have to redo a few things. Oh well. Yeah, I should have saved it. I didn't realize it hasn't crashed on me during the sandbox tools in a long time. I wasn't even expecting that. Yeah, I lost my texture edits. Oh, okay. I'll just redo a few real quick. One thing I like to do that seems to reduce the amount of crashing is I will explode all the curves. It seems to not be as difficult for the computer to process when the curves are exploded. So just redo this one real quick. Scale. Reapply. Okay. I don't get too upset anymore when it crashes. I try to save every 10 minutes when I'm working, and I just figure, hey, if it crashes and I lose 10 minutes or 15 minutes of work, as long as I can remember what I did, I should be able to do it in maybe 2/3 of the time. So 10 minutes, I could probably do it in about 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes, and 5 minutes, I could do it in 3 minutes, the same thing, because I already did it once. So, I just take it as a learning lesson and try to save it before any big operations. Anything that's intensive on the computer that could crash it. Working in 3D crashes more than anything that I've done. I mean, Photoshop or video editing, those are both highly intensive as well, but there's something about 3D is just really puts your computer, the RAM, the video card, the processor, just really puts it to the test. And sometimes, I don't know, it just kind of jukes it out, and it can't handle everything you're trying to get it to do all at once. And I could just sit there and wait for it. Maybe in 10 minutes it would get through that process, but it's faster for me to just redo a few minutes of work and just remember to save it before that operation next time. Push pull tool, let's do this again. And I did delete that part. Okay, so what I want to do is, what seems to help is if I select all the curves, right click and say explode curves, and so it breaks it up into segments. If I do view hidden geometry, I realize there's some hidden lines that I don't want. I'm just going to select those and delete them. Don't want to mess it up my model. Delete anything that is extra. Keep the model really clean. And then view hidden geometry. Now, before I do anything, I'm going to save it in case it crashes again. So let's try that again. Let's select both of these lines that we're trying to connect, and then go to the sandbox tools and click surface, create surface from contours. Now it did get stuck at 74 last time. I wonder if it's just a computing thing where it needs to think for a couple minutes. So since it's doing the exact same thing, it may not have been a crash. It may just be when it hits that 74% mark, it just needs, we need to be patient and let it do its thing. But I know another way to do this, so I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna since I saved it this time, I'm gonna reopen it and show you a different way to do it that doesn't probably won't crash. So to do that, I'm gonna make this, select this, make that into its own group. And then let me bring back this large tool set. And then I'm going to make a face by just drawing a connector line. Delete that line. Now if I do view, component edit, hide rest of model, it'll bring the view back, and then I'll use the push-pull tool, hold control, and then push a copy up of that surface, grab it, use the scale tool, and just scale it down. There. So that's what I wanted to do. It's probably a better way to do it like that. And then if I want it to be even smoother, I can do it a second time. And do it a little bit more subtle. Scale it up a little bit bigger this time. And then pull it again. And then scale it again. Just do the same thing. But now there's two segments of that curve. It's a little bit smoother. I like that. Delete the extra faces. We don't need that one. We probably will need for a second while we hit escape. Now I'm going to explode all of these areas. Now, in theory, if I draw one of these little pieces of a line, it will cut out the surface from this surface, and then I can delete that one. And then we're back in business. It's all connected again. Now I'm gonna triple click to select all of that surface and then smooth it out a little bit. Not all the way, because I want some creases in these little defined areas, but I want to smooth out this edge curve here. Now I'm going to duplicate the whole mesh down, scale it -1, and then bring it back up to meet. And then now for this the back side and the sides here, I'm just going to create a generic metal texture. So instead of using the image, I'll go to just pick a color and I'll paint it onto these areas here. And then go to edit, say click on use texture image, and then find a JPEG that looks kind of like metal. And I have one from a different project that I used. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of draw a square out here to get a good projection going. Because right now it's applying it to each face individually. I want to apply it to a larger area. Then right click on that, say texture, projected. Now I can project that onto the watch. And I'll probably rotate it a little bit so that it's not just projecting it straight on. I'll make it a group. Rotating it helps to give it a little bit of randomness so it doesn't look computerized and straight on. Let's see how that works. If I eyedropper that onto that material up there. So yeah, that looks really good. Apply it to that. And then I'm going to make it darker. Maybe I can brighten up turn up the brightness of the shadows a little bit right here. See what we're working with. We can also use this texture on a lot of other pieces if the image texture doesn't work out that good for us. We can always just use that as a generic metal. That will help us. Let's move this into place. That a little bigger. To exaggerate it a little bit. One thing I want to do is I want to readjust or adjust the angle of the axis of this object here, because it's on an angle, so if I try to scale it taller, it's going to be offset. So to do that, first let me save it. I'll double click on it, draw the line of the direction I want it to go. I'll draw a line, I'll rotate it for the new axis. Then I'm going to click on Tools, Axis, so I can replace the original axis of that object. And just click on that point and double click on that point. Now it's in the direction I want it to be, and I can scale it up like that and make it taller. It's a lot easier to work with. Get rid of that line now. Okay, so next, it's looking really good. I know I shouldn't act so surprised, but that's good. Save it. Let's draw the hands really quick. Circle and do 12 sides. Oh, come on. Ooh. is off. Okay. And we may end up making this the generic metal texture since it's dark. And it's such a small area, it's very pixelated. So we'll start off by giving it default material. And then using push-pull. Then we'll apply the default metal to it. It back over where it's supposed to be. There. We'll also put another cylinder over here. We'll make this just a regular circle. So when you're doing push-pull, you can also delete things, not just create them. Our second hand, and then we'll draw the hour and minute hand up here. We'll just draw one and duplicate it, scale it. This is a little bit intricate, so we're going to use the freehand tool to do this. White connect somewhere. Wonder why. That's weird. Why it didn't make. I think, oh, because I have this little piece right there. It has to be clean or else it won't connect with the surface there. So let me apply this texture here. And then we'll use the freehand tool to cut out this inner part. And I'm going to use a generic material, but I'm going to duplicate our generic metal and make it brighter color, more of a brass color. reapply the axis. So tools, axis, straighten it out. So now, oops, camera, previous. We can, we'll move it over to where it's supposed to be. Move it up. Now this will be the hours, so it's going to be shorter, but wider. Rotate it. So if it's, let's say it's 3:54, so about right there. And then we'll draw a circle, do it 24 sides. We're not inside the surface though. That's okay, let's just use the push-pull tool. Scale it. Use the offset tool. And let's give that the same brass texture. I want to do it as a projection. There. Now I can eyedropper that projection onto here. Be a little smoother. Make a group out of that. And one thing I like to do is draw a line just for a reference line so that you can rotate when you want to rotate. If you want to animate those hands moving, you can use that snappy rotation tool because that's right in the center. Okay, so now what we want to do is build a glass dome on top of this to protect our inner workings. Probably make this a little bit thinner. Let's save that. Save the file. Okay, so to build our glass dome, we'll move, hold down Control, make a copy of that circle there. And let's give that a default material. And then use the push-pull tool, do our little trick where we move, push-pull it, scale it down, give it a little bit of a dome shape. That's probably good. Delete these unnecessary faces. Soften edges. Then give it a new material. Both sides, and then make that material a little bit bluish. And then make it a little bit less opaque. And that will be the glass. Make that into a group. And then snap it down onto the surface here. Maybe we can apply an image to it just to give it a little bit more definition. So I'm using the same metal texture. I'm going to make it bigger, and I'm going to do view in geometry and give it a projection, and then rotate it a little bit. To give it a little bit of streak through it. Click on view, hidden geometry, and then an eyedropper, that projection onto both sides. Now I'm going to make this transparent. And that looks better to me. I can make it a little bit bluish even though we have a texture. I have to do. It makes it like a rainbow color, but if I click the colorize button, it will make it all whatever color I tell it to make. It'll overwrite the original color, so to speak. I could, instead of making it bluish, I could make it more reddish, even though it's still supposed to be glass, but it could be like a dusty glass at night, so maybe there's no blue sky, or depends on if it's in a real reflection. It would reflect whatever's around it, whether it's the sky, you're indoors in a room, or the other buildings around you, or you're in a car, or wherever it is, whatever is reflecting in here. But there's no ray tracing in SketchUp, so right now we can't see the actual reflections of what would be around it, which right now would just be white because there's nothing in the scene. You can, in other software, you can map reflections to the reflection channel to fake reflections. That's what they do a lot to speed up rendering times. Okay, let's call that good. This whole watch part is done. Now, I'll make it just a little bit more opaque. That's good. Now we'll start modeling these other pieces. Save it. I want to put this line right through the middle. And then just trace around half of it. And then we'll make we have to draw a circle. So to set this up, we can just draw a line straight up and make a triangle. That will give us something to snap our circle to. Put it on that face, hold shift to lock it, draw the circle. Let's turn down the brightness a little bit. Then delete the extra stuff that you just used to get that circle made. Keep that texture for reference. Follow me tool. Right click. Reverse faces. And apply this texture. That looks pretty good for now. Just delete that. We don't need that. Let's move it over. That looks good. Okay, so the next thing we need to model is this ring here. Give it more sides. Let's try 60. That's pretty good. Now we gotta draw the profile. Give it a 12-sided circle. Delete this line right there. Follow me tool. Smooth out, soften these edges. Reapply the material. That doesn't look that good. Let's just give it our generic material. Just a projection from there. I want to make it a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter material. Let's see, what if I do like that? That. Let's move that over into place. I think I want to brighten this texture up a little bit. I feel like if it's too dark, it's a little bit, takes away from the overall feel of it. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Darker is better. So I'm just gonna get rid of all of this stuff right now. I think we have enough references from what we've already done here. I feel like we can fake this one in. Just use a regular loop. So let's, because this is our swivel. So what happens is if you just use chains and you hook that chain directly to this, you may or may not know this already. But if you just hook that in, and then when your watch gets twisted around, it'll all bunch up, and then the chain could break even. But with this, it's a swivel, so as the watch turns, it doesn't twist up the chain. And that may be obvious to some people, or a lot of people, but I would just do a bunch of loops, but I don't want to make it unrealistic, because you would never have a watch without a swivel in real life. That's all I mean by that. Okay, so that's done. That swivel is done. Let's make... Now we just have to make a loop and then start duplicating it around. Let's save it, just in case it crashes on us again. So to make an oval shape, I know this is a little bit of a trick with the perspective of the photo, but it is an oval shape. Maybe not a perfect, it's not a perfect circle, I don't think. I could be wrong about that, but based on how this one looks in the background, I think it's an oval shape. So to draw a circle first, make sure there's enough sides, so I'm going to give it 30 sides. Then I'm going to scale it like that, in the up and down direction. Now, now I have to draw the profile circle. Do just a 12-sided circle. Follow me tool, And then we'll probably end up using the default material. So let's find a good place for it here. We scale it down a little bit. See what that does. We make that a projection. Eyedropper it onto there. It's not exactly what I was thinking. Let's put that a little better. Now I'm going to make this a component. Right-click, make component, so that if I end up messing with it later, it'll be a chain and they'll all be the same, and I can update all of them at once. So I'm going to start moving this into place. Let's duplicate this out here. Let's clean up this surface here, make a face there. To smooth these lines out, I'm using the eraser tool, hold down Control. Okay. Now I need to rotate that 90 degrees. So type in 90, enter. Now I can move, hold down Control, make a duplicate of that. I'm going to actually make that into a component so that I can copy this one and then it's linked together with the. So the two are linked because they're always going to have to be offset of each other to make it like a real chain. And then I can rotate them a little bit, give it a little bit of interesting curve. Now I'm going to rotate it the other way. Actually, I'll make it easier on myself. I'll make this into a component. Then I'll duplicate it. Rotate it 180 and rotate it again 90 degrees. There, now when I go to my scene, it looks like it's a little bit interesting and curvy. So what I want to do is select the whole thing, make it a component. Now, I started off with this at 20 inches just to make it easier to model. So I want to scale it down by 0.1. So I'll click on select it, the select tool, scale, start scaling it, type 0.1, enter. So now that should be the proper scale. Now that I'm done modeling it, just check it to be about 2 inches. It's 1 inch and 15/16. But if I was actually snapped to the actual ends, it would be 2 inches, so it's perfect. Go to the styles window, turn on model axis. Make sure it's lined up with the model axis so that it's not floating off in space somewhere. Just center it up here. I'll center it up with the end of it. And you want it to be sitting on the ground plane. That's pretty good right there. Go ahead and turn off the model axis again. Turn on shadows. And then play with the shadows a little bit. I think I like it about right there. Yeah, I don't want so much shadow that it just takes away from the interest of the actual object. Now I'll just right click on the scene, update. What I like to do at the end is go to model tab, model info, statistics, purge unused, gets rid of anything that we don't need in this, any helper objects or extra textures or extra components that we didn't end up using. We'll save it as another version and then save our final without the version number. And that's it. Okay, you can download this model. There's a link on the channel to download all models off the 3D Warehouse. If you want to suggest what project we model next, go to the Patreon. There's a link in the channel. And as always, I love this. It's what I do all day, every day, but this is the time I get to do fun projects, the ones that we want to do, and not necessarily, commissioned to do. It's things that I like to do. I'd like your suggestions on what fun things we could make, and then share it with the world, and use it in your projects. Thanks. Have a good night.